Before I begin, I want to let you know that this story contains mentions of addiction, sexual assault, and suicide. Please take care of yourself as you listen and step away if you need to. Hi, this is Shannon with Formerly Obedient, and this is just my voice. This is where I tell my story the way it really happened. Messy, raw, sometimes heavy, but always true. Today I'm sharing the chapter of when I was carrying our daughter. Our last child together, my last child. At the time I was raising 4 children, almost alone. I was finding tiny glimmers of kindness. And finally, I came to the moment when I knew I had to leave. So when I found out I was pregnant again, my husband made it very clear. This was not something he wanted. He told me more than once, "You did this on purpose. You wanted more babies. I did not." He was sober by then, but sobriety really hadn't softened him. The anger, the selfishness, the coldness of an addict, they were all still there. I often caught him watching pornography after we had agreed we wouldn't. I found messages between he and other women, including an ex that he had actually planned to meet had I not found out. When I confronted him, he said basically it was my fault because I was a high-risk pregnancy, because we weren't having sex, because he was tired of waiting. So I carried a new little life in my body and betrayal in my chest. I was raising 4 kids almost entirely on my own, working part-time, taking early childhood education classes, and dreaming of being a teacher. During that time, I ate very little. I gained very little weight because I needed my children to have enough. I had a friend that shared from her weekly food baskets that she got from her church. I stood in long, hot, humiliating lines with my children just to bring home a few bags of groceries. And still, I showed up to church and I served. There were little glimmers. A sweet couple at church who adored my children, especially the boys, kneeling to their level, looking them in the eyes, making them feel like they mattered. There was also another couple that loved them too. They treated me with gentleness and even showed respect to my husband in front of the kids, though I could tell they didn't really like him. During that season, I was an overseer for children's ministry. And something happened there that was sweet and scary and a little painful. A man that I served alongside, his wife also struggled with addiction. So many of the same traits that I lived with at home. We connected in a gentle human way. Nothing inappropriate. But sometimes I imagined, what would partnership look like if it were kind, if it were safe? Those little fantasies lit a fire in my chest. A reminder of what marriage could be. And just as fast, the guilt would rush in. In church, people knew things were bad, but no one named it. I got pats on the back for staying the course, for holding together a marriage that was quietly breaking me. So when I went into labor, I stayed home as long as I could. I cooked, cleaned, organized, made sure that my kids would be cared for. My 2 oldest children went to their father's house, and our 2 boys went to a friend's house. From the time we reached the hospital to the moment she arrived was less than 40 minutes. Terrifying, painful, and lonely. Because as soon as she was born, he left to pick up the boys. He didn't stay. But those 3 days in the hospital, just her and me, were a gift. She was tiny, 6 pounds, 11 ounces. I know that isn't tiny for a lot of people, but for me it was. She had no baby fat. and my body looked like I hadn't even been pregnant because I had eaten so little through this pregnancy. She clung to me like a little monkey, always on me, always near me. I rarely put her down, except when my oldest daughter took over. Definitely a second mom from the start. Even now, my youngest still sees her that way. When we finally got the medical okay to resume sex, I was hopeful. He had been attentive and flirty that day. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Afterward, he told me a story, a memory from years earlier, before the 3 youngest were born, when he was still using meth. He said he had slipped drugs into my drink one night, and that I had become uncontrollably aggressive and horny, and that it was exciting for him. As he spoke, I realized he was describing a time when I was newly pregnant with our first son. I don't know if it happened once or more than once, but I do remember nights I couldn't fully recall, desire that felt obsessive and not my own, and days of sickness afterward. Hearing him say it out loud broke something in me. Whatever that was, it was not consent. Still, there were tiny shimmers of light, moments with all the kids piled on the floor, giggling, moments when he held the baby just right, and it almost looked like love. Those glimmers mattered. They kept me going. They kept me hoping. When our youngest was just over 2 years old, my husband's mother died. He sat with her in the hospital, holding her hand. None of his siblings showed up. It was just him. He came home a broken man. His mental health collapsed, and he attempted suicide. My husband was admitted to a psych ward. While he was there, I finally started telling the truth. I told them how bad it had been, how scared I was for him to come home, that he was a scary husband and really a scary father. I did a lot of praying, asking God to let me out, to show me what was happening, begging for release for myself and for my children. Instead, I got Department of Children and Families on my doorstep. They came because they were concerned the children were being abused. My husband was still in the hospital. They interviewed me. They interviewed our children. I was terrified. I had heard of horror stories of eager social workers jumping the gun and taking children. After my husband was released from the hospital, he went to a sober living home. He was furious I wouldn't let him move back in. Furious that I insisted on that boundary. Finally a boundary. And for me, it was the beginning of the end. While he was gone, I made plans. I arranged to ensure my children were somewhere safer. When I told him, he exploded. He said I wasn't taking his fucking children anywhere, and walked out. A couple hours later, he called. He said he had prayed and he had heard God tell him to let us go. So he did. All I asked was for 1 year of raising the children without him. 1 year apart to see if I could heal, to see if I could do this. So I took 4 out of my 5 children to Oregon, where my parents were living. My firstborn chose to stay with her dad and finish high school. I want you to understand, leaving her behind was the hardest decision of my life. But I believed, no, I knew, to save the others, I had to make that sacrifice. So in June of 2010, I packed up 4 of my children and we moved to Oregon. And nothing was ever the same again. Thank you for listening to Just My Voice. These stories aren't easy to share, and they aren't easy to hear, but they are real. They happened, and telling them is how I begin to heal. If this resonates with you, if any part of this sounds like your story, or if you just want to know more, please reach out. Please subscribe, please comment, please share your heart. If you are experiencing addiction, thoughts of suicide, if you're experiencing sexual assault or abuse, I do have resources and I would love to talk to you. Thank you for holding this story with me.